The lights were a cruel, beautiful glare. 1,000 spotlights aimed at one man, Xiao Zhan, turning his sweat to silver. The applause was a tidal wave, a sound that could drown out the world, but in the echoing chamber of his mind, there was only a singular, deafening silence. He is looking at the one seat he always reserves, the one reserved for the silent anchor he knows is never truly absent. This is the story of his mother, Ailey, and the unspoken contract that saved his life. It is the love he can't speak of. Beijing, 2015, before the dawn. The air in the cramped, windowless rehearsal room was thick with desperation. They said I'm too soft, Mama, he whispered, collapsing. They said I should quit. He found her, meticulously sorting scraps of fabric. Ailey picked up a needle and a piece of deep crimson silk. It is ruined now. How do you fix a piece of ruined silk? No. You make the tear deliberate. You take the sharpest scissors, and then you weave a new, stronger pattern around the wound. You turn the mistake into the centerpiece. They struck an unspoken contract. He would never compromise his heart. She would never allow her worry to become his burden. She would be his before the bow. The noise became deafening, the pressure constant. Yet, there was always one silent moment that anchored him. The night before his first major fan meeting in Japan, he was paralyzed. His phone buzzed, an encrypted email from the unseen tier. The email contained a single image, a small potted jasmine plant on the familiar windowsill of his childhood home. No text. Only a silent audio attachment. He pressed play. It wasn't music, it was the sound of her scissors snipping fabric. Snip. 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 The rhythmic sound of enduring, tireless industry. This was his silent sanctuary. The noise is temporary. The work is forever. Then came the darkness, the brutal storm of controversy that destroyed his work. He retreated entirely. Ailey did not call. She honored the contract 3 months later, a parcel. Inside, his mother's battered, leather-bound tailoring ledger, her diary, disguised. On the final page, a single, shocking confession. She had not told him about the beloved childhood vase the bullies broke. I do not put broken things in the trash. I repair them, and I make them more valuable than they were before the break. I kept the silence, because sometimes the deepest love is the refusal to intervene. Xiao Zhan finally understood the cost of silence. It was the ultimate act of faith. She was giving him the space to become the phoenix. 6 months after his return, the true storm began. The threat arrived in a manila envelope. The note suggested her silence was a cover for a crippling sacrifice. He flew immediately to Chongqing. He found the true reason for the legal disaster. A powerful group of rivals had moved to legally block all his future work. She had sold the apartment. She had sold the family treasures. It still was not enough. The final, shocking truth. I have sold the rights to the Phoenix pattern. She had sold her patented tailoring design, her art, the core of her identity, to buy his freedom. The betrayal was aimed at Ailey, forcing her to break herself to save her son. The meeting took place in the sterile, high-rise office of the corporate lawyer, the shadow broker. We want you to tell the full story. Tell the world that your mother went broke and ruined her life's work. Sacrifice sells? You mistake me for a panic celebrity, Xiao Zhan said. I am a businessman who honors his debts. He presented a check for 10 times the value they paid for the rights. This is the full, fair market value for the total, permanent legal rights to the Phoenix pattern. No stories. Xiao Zhan took a pen, and with a single, deliberate stroke, he drew a bold, black line, a deliberate tear, right across the chest of the painted phoenix. That's my signature. An acknowledgement of the wound. You cannot break the anchor, because the anchor always holds fast. He had paid the debt. He had secured the silence. He had achieved the golden repair. Days later, back in Chongqing, Xiao Zhan presented his mother with the framed, original Phoenix pattern blueprint, now bearing his deliberate mark. Ailey took the framed sketch. Her eyes immediately found the bold, black line he had drawn. A deliberate tear, she murmured. You fixed it with gold, Zhan. The contract was fulfilled. The anchor held. A love forever beyond fame. Now that you've seen the depths of their sacrifice and the battle to protect their secret, this industry eats sentiment. If you cry, cry when the lights are on. It makes better television. Click
Xiao
here to
Zhan
watch
didn't
the final,
cry.
shocking
He
chapter.
simply gathered his
The
meager
true saboteur,
belongings,
The name behind the network that hunted Xiao Zhan's mother. That night, exhausted and defeated, he walked across the city, 5 miles, because the subway fare was a luxury, to his mother's tiny, borrowed apartment. He found her not sleeping, but meticulously sorting through scraps of fabric, her tailoring tools laid out on the floor. She looked up, her face a map of worry, but her eyes, those beautiful, steadfast eyes, held no pity. "They said I'm too soft, Mama," he whispered, collapsing onto the worn sofa. "They said I should quit. That I don't have the fire." His mother, whose name we know only as Ailey, didn't rush to comfort him. She did not offer platitudes. Instead, she picked up a needle and a piece of deep crimson silk. Ailey placed the needle in his hand. It was cold and sharp. "This silk," she said, her voice a low, steady murmur. "It is meant for a wedding dress, but the customer cancelled. It is ruined now. Tell me, Zhan, how do you fix a piece of ruined silk?" Xiao Zhan stared at the fabric. You can't. You discard it." Ailey shook her head. Her hands, callous from years of stitching, took the silk back. "No. You don't discard it. You don't try to hide the tear, because everyone will see the clumsy repair." She leaned closer, her eyes glittering with fierce, maternal intensity. "You make the tear deliberate. You take the sharpest scissors and cut away everything but the beautiful parts. And then you weave a new, stronger pattern around the wound. You turn the mistake into the centerpiece." She held up the finished piece, not a dress, but a stunning, intricate phoenix embroidered entirely from salvaged pieces. A perfect, powerful metaphor. "The industry," Ailey stated, her voice iron-hard, "sees a soft piece of cloth. It wants you to be hard. But I see a phoenix. Now stop trying to be what they want. You cannot control their words, Zhan. But you can control the threads you weave." That night, they struck an unspoken contract. He would never compromise the pure heart she had raised. And she, in turn, would never allow her worry to become his burden. She would be his before the bow, the quiet strength he took onto the stage. As his fame grew, so did the chaos. The noise became deafening. The schedules were brutal. The pressure constant. Yet, wherever Xiao Zhan traveled, Shanghai, Tokyo, London, there was always a brief, silent moment that anchored him. It was the night before his first major fan meeting in Japan. He was terrified, paralyzed by the weight of expectation. His manager had left the room, leaving him alone in the opulent, but soulless, hotel suite. His phone buzzed. It wasn't a call, or a text, or a trending search. It was a single, tiny, encrypted email from an account only he knew. The sender was always the same, the unseen tear. The email contained a single image. Not a selfie, not a motivational quote, but a photograph of a small potted jasmine plant, placed on the simple, familiar wooden windowsill of his childhood home. Beneath the photo, there was no text. Only a single, silent audio attachment. Xiao Zhan plugged in his headphones and pressed play. It wasn't his mother's voice. It wasn't music. It was the sound of her scissors snipping fabric, snip. 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 The familiar, rhythmic sound of her at work, the sound of focus, of creation, of enduring, tireless industry. It was the sound of a woman quietly building and mending, a sound utterly untouched by the hysteria outside his hotel door. He closed his eyes. In that moment, the 5-star hotel vanished. The 50,000 screaming fans waiting for him the next day dissolved. There was only the sound of his mother's silent work, a pure, clean signal cutting through the global noise. This was his silent sanctuary. The sound was his advice. Keep working. Keep mending. Keep creating. The noise is temporary. The work is forever. He slept soundly that night. The next day, he walked onto the stage and gave the performance of his life. Then came the darkness. The brutal, unforgiving storm of controversy that swept his name, his work, and his life into a torrent of online vitriol. The world turned on him. His work was destroyed. His silence was twisted into guilt. Xiao Zhan retreated entirely. He cut off contact, sinking into a depression that felt terminal. The public shame was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Ailey did not call. She did not text. She honored the contract. Her worry would not become his burden. It had been 3 months of crushing silence. Xiao Zhan was alone in an isolated rental house, staring out at a landscape as bleak as his mood. He received a parcel. It was heavy, wrapped in plain brown paper, with no return address. Inside, he found a battered, oversized, leather-bound book. It was his mother's old tailoring pattern book, the one he remembered her using when he was a child. He flipped through the pages, seeing sketches of sleeves, collars, and waistlines, all marked with her neat, precise handwriting. On the final page, a page he had never seen before, there was only one sketch, a drawing of a phoenix. Mid-flight it was drawn with a sharp, bold pencil, not the faint chalk she used for fabric. Beneath the drawing, in her hand, was a single, shocking confession. When you were 10, and the bullies broke your favorite vase, you hid the pieces and cried alone. I found them. I did not scold you. I took the pieces, and for a year, every night after you slept, I glued them back together, bit by tiny bit, with gold lacquer. Asterisk. You grew up to be strong, kind, and whole. You never knew the vase was broken. I have kept the pieces of that vase in a box. I was always waiting for the moment when you would finally understand. I do not put broken things in the trash. I repair them, and I make them more valuable than they were before the break. I never told you. I kept the silence, because sometimes the deepest love is the refusal to intervene. You must put your own pieces back. You must find your own gold. Click here to watch our next feature. The betrayal of the anchor, how a secret threat almost ruined Xiao Zhan's comeback. This part of the story begins 6 months after his triumphant return, a time when the world believed he was invincible. It was in this calm that the true storm began, not from public hatred, but from a calculated, chilling act of sabotage designed to destroy not his career, but his very foundation, the silent anchor he held so dear. The labyrinth of silence. The threat arrived not in a headline, but in a small, unassuming manila envelope delivered to his private studio. It contained 3 items: a single, faded photograph, a typewritten, anonymous note, and a key, a dull, brass key to a place he hadn't thought about in years. The photograph was of Ailey, his mother, taken roughly 2 years ago, right at the peak of his darkest time. She was not smiling. She was standing outside a small, antiquated pawn shop in a forgotten district of Chongqing, her face etched with exhaustion and worry, the exact opposite of the strong, stoic image he treasured. The note was brief, chillingly precise. The anchor always sacrifices the most. The cost of your resurrection was not yours, but hers. She kept the silence. You never knew the price of her silence. The truth is locked away. It's time to pay the debt. The message was a blade to his heart. It directly contradicted the foundation of their unspoken contract, the promise that her worry would never be his burden. The note suggested her silence wasn't faith, but a cover for a crippling sacrifice she had made to protect him. He realized in a nauseating rush that the cost of silence had been exponentially higher than the public shaming. He understood instantly why she had only sent him the Phoenix pattern book, and not a word of comfort during the crisis. She had been too busy saving him in a way he couldn't see. He gripped the brass key. It was the key to the back storeroom of Ailey's old tailoring shop in Chongqing, the very place where they had struck their Phoenix contract a decade earlier. He had assumed she had sold the shop years ago. That same night, Xiao Zhan was on a private jet bound for Chongqing, telling his manager only that it was a family emergency. He had to know what secret debt his mother had silently carried. The tailor's ledger. The old tailoring shop was dusty, dark, and silent, the air heavy with the ghost of fabric and thread. The front was shuttered, but the brass key worked perfectly on the rusty lock of the back storeroom. Inside, the room was immaculate, a time capsule of their shared past. Bolts of silk were stacked neatly, measuring tapes coiled like sleeping snakes, and on a simple wooden desk lay the tailor's ledger. This wasn't an accounts book. It was Ailey's daily diary, disguised as business records. Xiao Zhan opened it, his hands shaking, and dove into the elegant, familiar script. He flipped through the years, recognizing entries about making simple sleeves and mending school uniforms. Then, he found the entries from 2020, the fire and the phoenix. The handwriting changed, it was rushed, desperate. Mind-blowing scene 4, the